Welcome back to Franco Fridays. Today I've got a Kino release, spine number 50, and that is Daughter of Dracula, 1972. The original shooting script title of this was Hunt for an Assassin, I believe. And it was, this is kind of a loosely cobbled together trilogy of what I call gothic monster films that Franco did, starting with Dracula, Prisoner of Frankenstein, followed up by this one, and then the erotic rites of Frankenstein. This is the weakest of the three, clearly, and it's because it's got an incoherent storyline, and it's not with many of Franco's films. Sometimes they appear incoherent, but in a lot of cases, there's a charm and a storyline that's there. You just got to look for it. But this really is an incoherent storyline, and I think it's trying to do two things at once. It appears to be an attempt to make a giallo film that at some point during the production, they just decided, well, maybe the idea of giallos is going dead, and maybe we need to switch gears now with the popularity of Dracula and vampire films. Let's make a vampire film. So let's just shoot some extra vampire footage, edit it in this thing, and turn this, what was supposed to be a giallo, into a vampire film. I mean, you can speculate, but that appears to be what's going on, because you have a masked, shadowy assassin with yellow socks, by the way, a giallo-esque type assassin going around trying to kill people. And then you've got, interspersed with that, scenes of Britt Nichols being a vampire. And it just, every time you see the vampire type scenes, it just doesn't fit the rest of the mood of the film or the setting of the film. So all I can presume, and Tim Lucas in his commentary on this track suggests the same thing, as well as Stephen Thrower in his book. I looked at it, said that this feels like a producer or a distributor or someone kind of switched gears on Franco. I don't think the incoherence of this plot is just because Franco directs incoherent films. I think it just had to do with they decided to switch gears and follow the current trend, which in 1971, 72, you had a lot of vampire Dracula films coming out. Dracula AD 72, Satanic Rites, Paul Morrissey's Dracula, on and on and on. David Niven Dracula films. I mean, you had Dracula monster type films that were gaining in popularity, while it appeared that maybe the giallo type films were waning a bit, at least at that time. I don't know. It's hard to get into the minds of a producer or distributor, but I don't believe that the incoherent storyline here is just because of Jess Franco. But anyway, what you're looking at is, from the opening scene, you've got the very opening scene, you've got the classic Franco voyeur scenario, a girl, which appears to be Britt Nichols, watching a woman take a bath, and then suddenly, in broad daylight, she bares her fangs and attacks her. Then you cut away to Britt going to, I guess, a family house, the castle Count Karlstein, which I guess is a bastardization of Count Karnstein, the Karnstein family. And of course, the storyline really is based on the Carmilla story and the Karnstein story, which I don't really understand why they bastardized the name to Karlstein, but they did. I don't think there's a copyright on that, but at any rate, Britt doesn't find out that she's part of a vampire family until 2 or 3 scenes after the opening scene. So already you're off to, it's Confusion City right out of the get-go. And interspersed with this storyline, you've got a shadowy cloak-like figure, just like in a giallo, except with yellow socks, attacking a female There's 2 or 3 scenes where this guy out of nowhere, this shadowy figure that looks potentially like it may be Britt Nichols or a woman of some sort dressed as a man attacking people, permeating the storyline. Then you've got the police inspector and, of course, a nosy reporter that's always 2 steps ahead of the police, doing their own independent investigation of the murders and trying to figure out who's doing it and why they're doing it, etc. So it's a very confusing piece of work. Howard Vernon plays Count Dracula, and he never leaves his coffin. He's seen in a couple of scenes. He never leaves. Not only does he never leave his little lair, he never even leaves the coffin. All he does is just kind of sit up, bare his fangs, and then he has only one real scene where he bites somebody, or attempts to bite somebody. So it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. At any rate, Britt Nichols, who plays Louisa, finds out from her mother that there's a curse on the family, and she's potentially going to be hit with that curse, which she does. She becomes a vampire. And she doesn't portray what you would expect from a lesbian vampire. The film has a number of key set pieces that are very good. For example, there's a great scene with Britt, a lesbian scene, where she's undressing another female, and it might have been Anita. It might have been Anita Liebert. The first scene, I think, where she does this, she's undressing her and then attacks her, a la Ingrid Pitt and Vampire Lovers. But she doesn't command. She almost doesn't play it like she is a vampire or knows she's supposed to be a vampire. Ingrid Pitt, I mean, if you, by way of analogy, Ingrid Pitt, if you watch Vampire Lovers, knows she's a vampire. That's her character. Britt kind of goes through this almost like doesn't know she's supposed to be playing a vampire, which leads me to believe even more so that maybe this thing started out as a giallo and then they just had to switch gears. Every scene where you see Britt bare her fangs, like I say, it looks like it's just cut into the scene and it doesn't fit the scene. But going back to the lesbian attack scene, the first attack scene is very, very classic Franco. The scene is well shot, beautifully portrayed, and you've got the benefit of outstanding piano music overlaid into that, written by the composer Daniel White. And the interesting part of this film is that for the first time we get to lay eyes on this Daniel White. He actually he's been a long time partner with Franco on a lot of his early films. He plays the Count, the head of the family of this Count Karlsteins. So we get to finally see who this Daniel White looks like. But at any rate, he plays a piano composition while this attack is going on, unbeknownst to him, of course. He's living in this castle, has no idea that he has a vampire living in the castle, just blissfully ignorant about what's going on around him. The only person that seems to know what's going on around him is Jess Franco, who has an acting role in this. He plays the secretary, Emil, the secretary to the Count, and he knows there's some dark goings on here. And Jess Franco did a great job acting role in this. In fact, he has a set piece scene towards the end where his wife, who was basically having an affair with the Count up and leaves. Who knows where he goes? The story doesn't really explain that. But she goes back to Emil, Jess Franco, and says, let's get back together. He gives a very moving and realistic dialogue sequence where he says, we'll be together, but only out of necessity. And because of that, I'm going to go kill off these vampires that are ruining our lives. So he goes off, tries to kill the vampires, and of course the reporter beats him to it, and in the final scene stabs Howard Vernon through the forehead. I think it's the only time that I know of that a vampire is staked, but staked through the head, right through the forehead. It's ridiculous. Strange film. I mean, like I said, even the ending, the focus of the film is supposed to be the Carmilla-like Brett Nichols, but in the end, they don't even focus on her as far as the killing. The focus is on bludgeoning to death Howard Vernon. They set a woman's coffin on fire, which we have to assume is Brett Nichols, but there's no close-ups, no shot. It doesn't really. It's a very unsatisfying ending to a particularly relatively unsatisfying film, even for Franco fans, I think. Now, that's not to say this doesn't have some redeeming values, because what you do get with this is 2 or 3 very good set piece scenes. The lesbian scene, the first lesbian attack scene. You also get a very interesting shot of a scene where a woman is smoking a cigarette at a piano. It's one of the most fascinating cigarette smoking shots I've ever seen. And she's anticipating some erotic rendezvous, but it turns out that Brett Nichols is going to bite her on the neck, and she does, of course. But even that scene, all the lead up to Brett Nichols bearing her fangs, the insert of Brett Nichols bearing her fangs doesn't fit the scene at all. It just kind of blows it completely. There's also a third lesbian attack scene, which is really kind of more like what you would see with a Jess Franco film, where they're showing exposed boobs and those type of things, but it's ruined by this strange clown-like music. It's the first time that I can think of in a Jess Franco film where the music just, not only does it not fit the scene, it just not good. It doesn't work at all. It kind of ruins the whole mood of that scene. Other than that, the photography is great. The scenes it was shot in Portugal, so a lot of the scenes are of castles and things that are very, very interesting to look at, on location sets and things like that. It's just the problem with this is just it's a mismatched storyline that even for a Franco fan like myself is difficult to stomach. As far as the release, I do recommend the release. I think it's a well done restoration by Kino, and you do have a very good commentary by Tim Lucas. But as far as the film itself, I gotta give it a 5 out of 10. It's just not one of Franco's better efforts. And again, I don't blame him for it. I would have to suggest to you that this was going to be a giallo that got midway turned into some kind of a vampire film, not by Franco, but by the producers. The other thing you got to remember is in 1970, 71, 72, and 73. In 1972, I mean, this was probably one of Franco's most prolific outputs. He did 9 films in 1972, and I think in one year in that range he did 14 films in 1 year. So, he was cranking these things out. So I think he can be forgiven for a couple of misses, and this is clearly a miss, no doubt about it. At any rate, I'm going to leave you with that. That is Daughter of Dracula. And, great release. I recommend the release. Not a particularly good Franco film, however. All right. I will be back later today. I'm wearing my Alien shirt because I'm going to go see Alien Covenant. And I will probably post a review of my thoughts on Alien Covenant later today. So appreciate it. Thanks for watching.